Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast with Elizabeth Chappell, where every week we dive into how you can turn your craft into a successful career. Get ready to have the career you've always dreamed of.
Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Craft to Career podcast. I am Elizabeth Chappell, your host, and today we have a business coaching call with Sherry Freyermuth of Bowberry Design Company. We're going to dive real deep into her business, which I cannot wait to share with you. And you get to hear things that will definitely help creatives out there who are also starting their own business or want to grow and see more success with your business. Before we jump into that, I of course want to read the review for this week. And I also want to tell you that coming up September 7th, so that's Tuesday, September 7th through September 12th, and this is 2021, I will be opening up registration for the Quilt pattern writing course. This opens only once a year, and it's for 6 days, so not even a full week. And it's a 8-week intensive course where we dive very deep into helping you write and sell your own patterns successfully. So if you listen to this podcast or if you are listening to the business coaching calls and you want to write and sell your own quilt patterns, make sure to visit www.quilterscandy.com, look under courses, and join the waiting list because I would love to have you in the course. This is my second year to do it, and I am just so pleased with the alumni from last year and the success that they're having. All right, with that, let's jump into this week's review. It comes from Janine Franson. I'm afraid I'm saying that wrong. It's at JANEANFRANDSEN. And she says, Elizabeth does such a great job sharing useful information that not everyone is willing to talk about. I'm just starting my quilting biz, and her advice and tips have been invaluable. I look forward to every episode and get something I can implement from each one. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing your knowledge and starting these great conversations. So I really love to hear this because I do like to ask the questions that probably not everyone else wants to ask and talk about the things that not everyone else is talking about. So I really appreciate and enjoy this review. If you're enjoying the podcast, I would love for you to leave a review at the end of the show. And each week I like to start off by reading a review from someone. So go ahead and leave a review. And let's get started with this week, episode 20, the business coaching call with Sherry. I am so excited to have Sherry Freyermuth here on the Craft to Career podcast. Sherry is one of the many people who submitted to be on this coaching call. And I'll admit it was really difficult to narrow down who I wanted to have. But what intrigued me with Sherry's business is that she, one, is in the beginning stages of her business. I was really excited to have someone who can share these very beginning growing pains and talk about how to find success, because I think a lot of you are in that stage. And she's also a fabric designer. And so that's something that I've not shared on the podcast before. And it's a very unique approach. Don't worry if you're not a fabric designer and a quilt pattern designer. The things we're going to talk about can be applicable across the board, but I'm really excited to share insights in this specific niche. So welcome to the podcast, Sherry. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I'm excited that I was picked.
Yeah. And congrats. I mean, not congrats really, but well done on applying. It's very vulnerable to put yourself out there, to let the world listen to you and to, open up to, okay, what can I do? So well done on that. That can be very intimidating.
Thanks. Yes. I'm a brand new business and I'm just really figuring it out. So I've listened to a couple of the coaching calls you had and I thought, why not? I got to give it a try.
Perfect. Well, I'm proud of you. So first of all, can you introduce yourself, what your business is and how you got started with it?
Okay. My name is Sherry Freyermuth. My business is Bowberry Design Co. And it's a design company that focuses on quilt patterns, kids craft projects, and surface pattern design, which is fabric design and repeat patterns for different manufactured goods. And my business is brand new. I started this journey at the beginning of 2021 as kind of a creative outlet with like a drawing a day. I did the Spoonflower drawing challenge. And I just it kind of like lit me up. And I was like, I want to make repeat patterns. I kind of discovered that surface pattern design was really, a viable, business option for me. And I thought, okay, let me see how this could work. And so I really focus on fabric design and, my only kind of revenue right now is, as I was kind of developing fabric design, it's not super easy to get licensed in the fabric industry, but I was like, let me just print some stuff on Spoonflower. My mom's a quilter and she's like, maybe you should make a quilt. I was like, that's a great idea, So I made like my first like whole cloth quilt. Her friend helped me quilt it on her long arm quilt machine. So they definitely been helping me out. I made like a baby quilt that's a self-binding, and I printed it on like a minky fabric through Spoonflower. I feel like they call it something else, but it was kind of like maybe it was a minky or a fleece. And so I've been trying different substrates and really just doing these like large scale patterns. And then I just was like, I'm going to try making a quilt pattern. And so I designed a few different quilt patterns and kind of testing things out. But then I took another leap and I reached out to PBS Fabrics. They had an open call for pattern designers, and I had submitted something I had already designed, and they were like, oh, that looks good. Can you design something for us around an existing collection that's coming out this year? So I said yes. And then I learned how to write my first instructions. So I actually sold 2 quilt patterns to them, and that's kind of my first like revenue for my business. And I'm posted my first, my own pattern. So PBS kind of bought out my pattern so that they make it available to their customers for free. And then I was like, okay, let me try to make one that I can sell myself. And that's in my Etsy shop. And I'm trying to figure out how to promote and sell my products.
So just to be clear, this year is when you first started this whole business.
Yes.
And it's August right now. I'm blown away with how much you have done in a few months. Like, I'll be honest, I thought you've been doing this a lot longer. So that's really cool. And when I even read, I started in 2021, I'm like, no, that can't be accurate. Like, so this is really impressive. What's your background? Did you know Adobe Illustrator beforehand?
Yeah, I should preface it with, I've been a graphic designer for at least 15 years. And I am a graphic design professor. That's like my day job. So, and I've been doing that for almost 10 years. So I guess like my skill set is definitely, I know the Adobe Creative Suite. I actually learned EQ8 though. I think that was much easier to work with because I didn't know how to calculate yardage and all of that. So that was a bit of a learning curve, but I just think my design background helped with some of the tech can be a big hurdle. So I wanted to kind of preface with that. And then I think just been teaching so long, I just kind of was like, let me just break this down. Like, what can I do? But I'm also just kind of, I really had nothing to lose. So I was just like, let me just get some stuff out there. And my mom is my real like expert quilter. So she is giving me feedback. She's helping test my patterns. And so I have the kind of like layout skills to diagram out the quilts, but without her feedback, I don't, it kind of set me up for a little bit faster process.
This makes more sense. I'm like, how the heck did you jump into all this? But knowing all that you have the mom to help. So you have the perfect storm, if you will, for this. Okay, that makes much more sense. I did not know your background with graphic design, and you're a professor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I teach at Clark University in Worcester, Mass. So and something I'm interested in is teaching my students more about entrepreneurship. So that's kind of like how I started thinking about, well, what can I do to show my students how I could make a business and teach. And so like in the spring, I have an entrepreneurship class that I'm teaching, and I wanted to set the stage for that by showing them examples of ways they could, you don't have to starve as an artist. Like, here's some things you can do. And so that was kind of like, I was like, maybe I'll just show them how you can sell on Spoonflower and how to open an Etsy shop. And it's kind of just, it's snowballed into something bigger than I really started out to do.
Yeah, that is so exciting. And it's funny reading. So just so the listeners know, I sent you an email ahead of time asking questions and looking for your link so I could look over everything and be prepared, with what to talk about and share and help you with. And you'd mentioned that you had a full-time job and that this creative outlet. So I did not know what that was. And this is really cool to learn about. So, okay, what would be your dreams for your creative business? Like, what would success look like for you?
I guess one of the first things was trying to develop an illustration style, and I have been working towards that. That was really what I started out to do, is like how to define my style. I think a lot of artists struggle with that. And I started doing these kind of paper cut style patterns. I was doing more digital illustration. I started working a little bit more by hand. So I'm starting to feel like really good about where I'm at with my style. Because I have been working for a long time. So it's not like it's something I started from scratch with. I think a lot of people coming into it for the first time, I'd say, how did you develop a style? Well, I've made repeat patterns for a number of years and never tried to sell them. But I wanted to kind of hone in on what makes my designs more unique to me so people could recognize them. So I feel like that's something I think I'm starting to land on. But with my quilt patterns, I don't think that I have a style yet. I'm still kind of figuring that out, which is fun because designing a quilt pattern to complement an existing fabric collection it's kind of a fun way for me to think about how do I think about quilts. So I think that was easier for me to think about that. I'm trying to make this fabric look as great as possible. So that's how I came to those two pattern designs. And so I'd still like to refine like what my quilts are really about. And then my dream, I guess, I want to be able to design fabric for a fabric company. Like if PBS, this Paintbrush Studio Fabrics is what it stands for. If they, would love to commission me to do a collection every year, like that was kind of what I started out. Like, could I license, a collection, one or two collections a year with the same company and kind of feel like I'm behind that brand? And I see a lot of like fabric designers do that. Like they work with one company and over time they are just coming out with a collection annually. So that's kind of like my biggest goal. And then, to actually, sell my own quilt patterns. I don't have any sales yet on my, I have a quilt pattern called Diamond Step in my Etsy shop. And I'm like, it's there. I talk about it on social media, but I don't know how to sell it. And so I'd like to be making, I think 4 quilt patterns a year seems like a reasonable goal right now. And just kind of, really kind of be invested in a brand where I can kind of promote fabric design and quilt patterns together.
Yeah. Okay, this is so interesting, and it's making so much more sense because as I was looking through, and we'll get down to the nitty-gritty and ideas, but hearing your background of graphic design, I was like, your art has the niche down. We need to do that with the quilt patterns. And so now understanding that quilting is new for you, I'm like, aha, I can see why there's this, so very interesting. Okay. And love hearing your goals. And I do think it's very doable for you. Which, have you reached out to PBS Fabrics, Paintbrush Studios? Is that what it is?
Yes, because I've already sold them 2 quilt patterns. I was like, would you be interested, if I had some fabric collections? And so they're open. And I sent them some design samples and they said, great, like this is how we like to accept our collections. Every company kind of has their own guidelines. So they sent me their guidelines and I'm working on a couple more like kid-friendly designs. I have one with unicorns, but they've done a unicorn print. Like they have one and so I was like, let me put together this other one. So I'm just kind of finishing up. It's a snakes and lizards collection kind of theme. And they have a lot of like really playful themes. Like they have something coming out with, I don't know if it's out yet, with like mermaids and really fun stuff. So I feel like, I think my style suits what I've seen them put out there. They also are one of the fabric companies that puts out some larger scale prints, which works well with some of my designs. So I think it could work. So I'm just,
Yeah, but the fact that they are like talking with you and not just shutting that door of like, nope, we're not accepting anything. I mean, that is huge. Where you are right now is where many dream to be in the fabric design process. So that's very promising. So as far as success for your business goes, can you share some of your biggest hurdles that are getting in your way of stopping you? Which I feel funny. You're so at the beginning and you're doing so well. And I do think sometimes people get this idea in their head that there's instant success and that they're going to have, I'm not saying you, but that people are like, well, as soon as I start writing quilt patterns, there's going to be this instant success. So you're doing really well. I just want to say that. But what are the hurdles that you have been experiencing with the growth?
Well, and I feel good about like my progress so far. I'm all about like start where you are and have, slow growth is good growth. I do believe strongly in that. But I think, I started with a website that it was a portfolio, and it was the easiest thing to make because it was an Adobe portfolio. And if you pay for Adobe, it's free. But now my website doesn't really serve me because there's no e-commerce, there's no blog feature. Like Adobe portfolio is just to kind of show artwork. And so I want to get onto a different platform, and I'm testing out Shopify. I think I could finish that maybe next month in September if I am ambitious. So I'm kind of trying to learn a new platform. Like that's probably one of my biggest hurdles is like I'm okay with web design. I've done some WordPress, but I think Shopify just seems like the better option for me. So then it's just now I have to learn Shopify. I think developing an audience. I've been posting artwork. And so I'm kind of speaking to like friends and family are my followers and my former students that I've taught. And so they're interested. And now I've got a few people that are more into the quilts. And so I'm trying to balance that narrative. And then I was like, oh, I'll just make a personal account. But I kind of wanted to save that for some of the graphic design stuff and some of the stuff I'm like, so I was going to so I'm trying to figure out how Bowberry Design Co. can be like quilting and design. And I also am prototyping a kid's craft kit that I think could be really fun. So I'm just like testing a lot of things. And I need to, by 2022, I would like to be like really clear about what I'm doing next year.
Okay.
So I can, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm going to jump into the coaching because that is the perfect segue. So my first thing is, well, one, just congratulating you for all that you've done, for building a relationship with Paintbrush Studios. I mean, you've really done a lot that many people haven't done in a lot more time. So very well done with that. But the niche, I looked at your email and hearing what you're saying now. So there's quilt patterns, kids craft, surface pattern design, and with that, it's for craft and hobby industry, for the craft and hobby industry. So as a business coach, that's a lot. For a customer, that's a lot. And so I'm glad to hear that you are one step ahead saying by 2022, I want to have that narrowed down. And it sounds to me, and I try really hard to listen when people are talking of what they want to do so that I'm not steering you to where I think you should go, but to what your passions really are. And it sounds like obviously the surface pattern design is a natural. And it sounds like it's surprisingly easy for you. And then quilt pattern design. Is that something that you love, or is it something that's just, this would be cool to do? Or, tell me more about your why besides your mom,
I do love making the quilt pattern designs. I hadn't really thought about that being the thing that doesn't fit, but
no, not that it doesn't fit. It's a great fit for surface pattern design, actually, and it's a great industry. It really is. Just wanting to make sure that that's something you love,
Yeah, I do really love it. I think part of it is that kind of like collaborative aspect with my mom, but I feel like there's something about the geometry of like, okay, I have this idea, like how can I make this work? The problem solving behind it, I think is really fun. So I definitely one of my hurdles was maybe if I make more patterns, people would trust my product a little more. So I thought, so I'm already like writing my next pattern. And trying to do kind of smaller projects like I'm mocking it up as a table runner, but providing instructions for larger size quilts. And so I'm like full steam ahead on that. I'm like trying to write it in the next 2 weeks so that I can just kind of show it off. Because I've been showing pictures of it and the quilt is done. And now I just got to finish like diagramming the instructions. And then I kind of have like my September pattern that I want to work on, which features like different bugs.
Oh, cool. I love that. I love that. And it works well, it sounds like, with the fabric that you're thinking of with the snakes and lizards. Am I making a lizard? Okay, snakes and lizards. So, okay, you had mentioned in your email, you said developing an audience is tough for me. And I think one of the major reasons is that their confusion over what your product is and what your look is. So like I kind of touched on before, your art, in fact, when I was looking at your Instagram account, I'm going to pull it up on my phone real quick here. I actually really wanted to work with you because you have such a look defined with your art. Like there's purples, yellows. I would describe it as playful, child, very, very fun. I mean, it's you've got it. Like you've got the look down. But I think more recently the quilt pattern designs came up, and I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect between your art and the quilt pattern designs. Mm-hmm. And don't freak out when you hear that, like, oh no, totally normal. And everyone goes through this process of figuring out what their quilt pattern design look is like. But if you can somehow mesh those two worlds and have your quilt pattern designs, your quilt pattern, the one that I'm looking, well, there's two. There's the red and white one that you have hanging on a quilt ladder.
Yeah.
And then the table runner. Those are two separate patterns. Is that right?
Yes.
They're very traditional. And then the fabrics that you're using, while beautiful, they don't match the look of the drawings, So that would be, your drawings, are they, I looked in one of your Etsy shops. It looks like, is it through Spoonflower that you sell like a panel with the, like a bunting banner?
Yes. And that speaks more to like the types of fabrics I'd like to design. So I thought, this is a fun way to get my art on a fabric before I get licensed. And so the kids' craft kits definitely speak more to that. And I want to maybe bundle it as a kit rather than, and I'm trying to, I'm in prototyping that and testing it. But as you're saying it, it's like those fabrics are my mom's fabrics. So they're her, like, I think if I just mocked it up in a bolder color palette and something that's more my style, that probably would already speak a little bit more to my aesthetic. Because I'm just kind of like, fall colors, fall's coming up. That's a great idea. Like, let's use these fabrics. And she already had this kind of like set for that table runner. And the diamond step, the red and white was just kind of, I really want to show the contrast in this. But she was interested in red and white and she had this great fabric and it was really pretty. So that's, It wasn't really something I consciously chose though.
Like one idea, I was going to say, I'll finish that thought. I was going to say doing the diamond pattern and just using solids that are found, like the periwinkle, is that what you call it? The background color for the unicorn fabric or design that you drew. But even that, the quilt pattern design is much more traditional. So keep playing with it. It's just like finding your look with surface pattern design. Because I feel like you really like the look of your illustrations, right? You've been doing this for years and this is the look that you've narrowed on. So if you can get your quilt patterns to have that same kind of feel, the same descriptive words, the same colors, which is a whole different platform. EQ8's a great way to play around with that though. And easily see, that would be my biggest my biggest tip is to really mesh those two looks together, the quilt pattern.
Yeah. And I think one of your questions kind of spoke to what are my what is the value of my quilt patterns. And I talked to a quilt shop owner in my local area, and she kind of was like, I have a lot of traditional quilters and some people aren't ready for the modern. She would call like these like contemporary, this kind of blend of the two. And because I'm so new to quilting, I don't design any quilts that I can't myself make. So like the most complex thing is like a half square triangle. So I think that, by just kind of changing the fabric, you can kind of see like you can make the traditional a little more modern. And that's kind of what I approached it with, is I think they're pretty accessible and there's no paper piecing or circles because I don't do that and I don't know how to do anything that complex. So I think just changing the fabrics would really probably give it a different mood.
And embrace where you are. I know even for myself, when I first started, I was like, oh, I need to know more. Like, I'm not a master quilter. Not a lot of people are, we want to invite more people into the quilting world, and having these more beginner friendly patterns, if you will, can do just that. And really the thing that I think will speak to a lot of people is your aesthetic, your artwork, like the fabrics. Even if you can on Spoonflower, until you work with PBS or another company, because you will. But until then, print something on Spoonflower to have as like, you can use solids that are already out there from another company. And then maybe for like fussy cutting or just to highlight one of your drawings in your quilt, you could print it off on Spoonflower or something.
Yeah,
just an idea.
That's a great idea. I'll try that because, they make it. It's really easy to kind of just test out my designs and then I can see. Yeah, that's how I started with the whole cloth quilts because I was like, I don't know what kind of pattern I'm just going to print it off real big and make a baby quilt.
And even whole cloth quilts. I mean, I think your art could really lend itself. I mean, when I first started, when I was dating my husband, I don't even know if he remembers this. I made a quilt for him for Christmas. It was a whole cloth tied quilt. And I was like, oh, I made a quilt, now that I'm more into piecing. But there is a market for that. So if that's something that you love to do, you can create panels and have a whole cloth quilt that's available for people. So lots of options there. I did notice that you said your Instagram posts, they're split. Right now they're split and there is a distinct feel between your quilting and your artwork. But again, I think that's because you've been using your mom's fabrics and it's not your look. So that's an easy fix. But I mean, you've got some great, I feel like I'm looking at your Instagram account. I feel like where the look that I'm feeling like is yours, and tell me if I'm wrong, starts with, let's see, here is a peek at one of the blocks from my new quilt pattern for PBS. Let's see, new collection, artist green. And it's got red, yellow, and then this funky, I don't know what you call that, design in the middle.
That funky design is by Ampersand Design Studio, and that definitely meshes more with my aesthetic. And so designing quilt patterns for their fabrics was really fun because that's like the new collection they're coming out with this fall. And the fun thing is that print is actually, they said they would promote my diamond step on their website with this collection. And so I mocked it up with that print and a solid yellow. And it looks totally different. And so then it would link to my shop, but then you'd see the red and white. But I'm like dying to get my hands on some of the fabrics in those collections because I just think, and I want to make that quilt. I made like 6 kind of modern looking blocks, but they're really simple to piece together. There's just a lot of white space around them. So I think that quilt pattern speaks more to my aesthetic. And then there's one I made called Geofrost for a collection called Ice Dye that they're coming out with. And so that I think it's somebody referred to it on Facebook in quilt pattern group as a scary pattern because it's not symmetrical at all, but it's actually like fairly easy to piece together. So people can download it and try it out. But I think that's a fun one because it has a lot of solid. So you really see the like texture in that fabric because she dyed it with this ice dye kind of process.
Which is super cool. It is super modern. And I love the design, but I'd love to see you make it with the fabrics that fit. Like, let me pull up this one. Oh, it's another Amherst and Studio. Is that how you say it? Ampersand?
Ampersand Design Studio. So that I kind of revealed each block, and then I put the whole quilt. So the whole quilt is on the PBS website, but I think I have it on my I think I posted the
I'll
whole
put a link to
layout.
that in the show notes because it's a beautiful. I mean, those fit your look. While the ice dyed fabric is super cool, I don't feel like it fits your aesthetic as much. Like if I were to look at that, I wouldn't step back and be like, oh, that looks like a Bowberry design. It's cool, but if you switch the fabrics out and put in something more, what are the colors? How would you describe your colors?
Well, I say the aesthetic is kind of cheerful. I would say bold, kid-friendly kind of color palettes. But I think, a lot of modern quilters use the same bold colors, but I'm putting these kind of fun motifs that are very kid-friendly. A lot of, like right now I'm trying to mock up this unicorn print, and it's got a lot of stars and flowers and a few rainbows. So hopefully it makes it a little more of a juvenile print, but
juvenile, but in the best way. Like it really is. And have you probably have, but you've seen those little brand, like on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper where it has your brand colors. So I would say like what I'm seeing, what I'm drawing, and this is based off of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like 9 posts on Instagram. So tell me if I'm wrong, but, the periwinkle, am I saying the right color? It's like a purplish.
Yeah.
Periwinkle, a yellow, kind of orangish red. Those are like the main colors that I'm seeing. And then there's some complementary colors. But like if you can stick with those and maybe make your brand board, maybe I'm off. Maybe I'm going off of Ampersand. I can't get their name right. Ampersand Studio off their fabrics. But no, and your unicorn designs. Yeah, no, this is right.
And the yellow is in the lizard print that I made. So I think there is some overlap there. But yeah, I think making a brand board for my colors, because I'm trying to figure out how to mesh quilts and my artwork. And I hadn't really thought about just changing the fabrics in my patterns.
Yeah,
I think
huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be. And I really do like the design, the Geo Frost. But like I said, I think redoing that in your signature colors would really when people come to your Instagram account or Pinterest or whatever it may be, you want them to look at a glance and know that that's your design, and by using those signature colors, that's a real simple way to do it, especially because I feel like you're pretty confident with that look as far as your graphic design goes. So carrying that over into the quilting, which you did ask about Pinterest, you want to use Pinterest, and you asked, do I need to have a blog to link people back? You do not need a blog. So Pinterest can be successful. I know, yay, I don't need to do that. Pinterest can be successful just simply by linking it to PBS Studio, to your Etsy shop. Pinterest is successful by having pretty pins and using, good SEO, having good searchable words that people are going to find. So like beginner quilt, free pattern, things, free quilt pattern, being smart with the words that you use in the titles. And then, of course, the pretty pictures. So, and the great thing about Pinterest is the longer it lives there, the more it's seen. Whereas Instagram, it kind of gets buried in the feed, the longer it's there, people, unless they're searching a hashtag. But so Pinterest is a great route to go, very great route for you to go. You do not need to have a blog for success with Pinterest. And ideas, okay, you mentioned that your audience is mostly family, friends, former students, and you're wondering how to bring in quilters. Is that right?
Yeah, I have a few, like someone actually messaged me, like, I can't wait for your artist garden grid quilt to come out. And that was the first time I was like, somebody's following me that I don't know, and they want to see my quilt pattern. Like that's probably like the best thing that's happened, is like someone actually is excited about this.
Yay.
So but I
You
don't know
know
how to
what?
find more people like that.
Okay, well, I've got ideas for you. But also, I think, myself included, I need to pull out a journal and literally write down those moments where someone is, where you, at this moment that we're recording, you have 471 followers on Instagram, and you had a stranger reach out to you and say, I can't wait for your pattern. In fact, you can even reach out and be like, how did you hear about it? I'm so excited for it too. And ask how they heard about it, and
Done
see
that.
how they found you. So the biggest thing for growing your audience, for one, don't be afraid if your audience shrinks before it grows. Because right now you've been doing all these things and you are going to get real narrow and specific. And people get so afraid to do that because they're like, my audience is going to shrink and I don't have an audience, That's okay. Like, it's probably even good if it shrinks at first because it will eventually lead to more growth. Because you want to, what I would envision for you right now is surface pattern design that's fabric and quilt patterns. So I know you have ideas of like quilt kid kits.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe put that on the back burner. Down the road, yes, add in the things, but you need to set yourself up in the industry as very identifiable as one thing. Lucky for surface pattern designers, that's like, I feel like that's the exception where you can be a surface pattern designer and a quilt pattern designer, and they very nicely go hand in hand. And so for you to post your art works really well if you can say, this is going to be a fabric too. People love to see on a flat, like your artwork on a flat screen, and just let them know, I can't wait to share this as fabric. I'll let you know when that's available, even if it might be a year from now, whatever, just let them know that this is fabric. These are quilt, that your audience is they come and they know this is quilts and this is fabric and that's it. And your audience is, you want to even get more narrow. Your audience, if you're going to go with kids, then go with kids. If you're going to go with women who quilt at a certain age, millennials, whatever it is, go with that and just serve that one demographic. That's it.
Okay. So if I do kid fabric, which I think is what I want to focus on, should my quilt patterns be baby quilts and things that would go in a kid's room? Like, or mock them up as though they would be in a kid's room, a kid's space?
Yeah, because your fabric has the unicorns. And by the way, that's a great niche. Like, so many people are making quilts for kids, and it's really hard to go in a quilt shop. There's lots of florals. There's not a lot of kid fabric. And there is some, yes, but it's a great niche. It's a great niche. So yes, you do. You want your patterns. They don't all have to be baby quilts, right. But they will serve. You want the adjectives to be the same for your quilt patterns and your fabric. So if juvenile is one of the words you use to describe your fabric, then that's the same you want to describe your quilt patterns,
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of focusing, and the kids' craft kits is really like early kind of figuring it out. I can kind of put that on the back burner and be fine with that.
Yeah. Well, and you had asked too, like, you have this full-time job and you're trying to grow this business. Where do I focus my energy? So as scary as it is for people to put aside the other things and really narrow down and niche down, it does serve you better because your time, all of a sudden you can get crystal clear and get rid of the other things and know exactly what to focus on, So it's just the quilt pattern designs, surface pattern design. That's it for these people. Bloop, nothing else, And it's also really good for your audience. Like, it will help you grow your audience because they'll know, oh, this is either for me or it's not for me. And you're not everyone who's following you, that they're there for that. They're not there for, now, are they here for this? Or are they here for that? You'll be very clear on this is what they're here for and they want it. Okay. Another idea for growth is collaboration. And I feel like I preach this all the time, but, your biggest success so far has come from PBS,
right?
The Paintbrush Studio. They bought your patterns. They basically bought the right to offer it on their website. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I got like a flat rate to make two patterns. And then they're very open to, I've mocked up a couple things in their fabrics that I'm going to sell myself. And they're like, great, we'll put it on the site to promote the fabric. So
That's
I
huge.
feel like I've got a good relationship with the patterns, and they're open to seeing ideas for fabric design. So I feel like it's a good collaboration that I'm hoping will turn into a licensing contract.
I am hopeful too. In fact, I really do feel like it will. So keep me updated. I'll have to share that update too when that happens. So that's one audience where you guys are cross promoting, and so their followers are going to see you, and vice versa. Your followers are going to see them. So it's a win-win. So look for more opportunities. You also mentioned Let's Quilt Along is promoting your patterns. Is that right?
Yeah, they have a quilt pattern directory. I can't even remember if I reached out to them. I feel like they reached out to me, maybe because of the cross promotion through PBS. I'm not sure how that came about, but I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to be featured in your newsletter. So, and then I was like, yeah, I'd love to be in your quilt pattern directory. And it's a $10 fee, but I think it's a great place to show what you're doing. And I think, she promotes a lot of stuff for free. So I feel like, I'll pay $10 for that.
Yep. So that's perfect. The more of that you can do, the more audiences, different audiences that are quilt related or fabric related, that you can have their audience see you, the better. So ideas for you would be to look for quilt pattern testers and see if they want to make your patterns. I mean, even sometimes I'll reach out to people who I love their look, and I know that if they were to make my quilt, they would make it in a fashion that speaks to my brand. And I will reach out to them, not often, but I would reach out to them and say, I would love to send you this pattern for free. Would you want to make it and post about it? And I just send them the pattern for free because I love their work. And, great, win-win.
I had a lot of questions about quilt pattern testers because I see it and I don't know how people find testers. And so that you just sometimes just reach out directly, but do you buy their fabrics or pay them for making it? Or I don't really know.
Yeah, there's so many different approaches to this. And it's a bit of a hot topic because some people recently have been saying, we need to treat our pattern testers better. We need to pay them more. And I actually personally have approached it differently, different times. And I know different quilt pattern designers who approach it so differently. So there's really no right or wrong way. And if someone doesn't want to test for you for whatever reason, they can say no. Things that I have seen in the past, one, paying someone to make a quilt for you, like by the hour, and you buy their fabric, or you provide the fabric, or, I mean, honestly, the most common is you just give them the pattern for free and they make it because they like it. Some testers, people will ask, if you see any tech editing, please share any feedback. I personally highly recommend having your patterns that you pay a tech editor to go through it before you ever send it to a pattern tester so that it's in the best finished product that you have, that you're ready to sell to the public. And some people don't do that. Some people will send it to a pattern tester in a rough form and kind of use their testers as tech editors. But I personally like to give my pattern testers like a finished, completed version so that it's just easy for them. And then if they happen to notice something, oh, let's fix that. But yeah, there's a ton of different ways to approach it. So as far as finding testers, what I do is I search hashtags for modern quilters, baby quilts, or whatever would be applicable for you. And I literally, in Instagram, you can save photos in different files, do you know that? I don't know if people know that.
I bookmark a lot of stuff. I've never organized my bookmarks.
Yeah, so you can bookmark it and save them in different categories. And so I literally have a file of pattern testers, people who I'd like to test for me. And then when I'm ready to have a quilt tested, I'll go and look up who have I bookmarked and reach out to them. And how you reach out to them matters, it's just like people skills, but reaching out to them and letting them know. Also, I've noticed too, if you reach out to someone to pattern test and say, if you sound desperate, it's not as appealing. Like, this is my first pattern. I've never done this before. How would you, they're going to be like, no, thanks. But if you approach with confidence and I love your style, I actually have requested you specifically because I love your look, that kind of a thing. So,
and if I'm trying to show off some of like my fabric designs, I could definitely offer to send them some custom printed fabric that I can print off on Spoonflower, and maybe that would be enticing. I don't know.
Yeah. And if you're specifically looking for people who fit your brand, I would share a picture like, I'm looking specifically to showcase this fabric that I've printed on Spoonflower. I feel like this look speaks to you. Let me send you a screenshot of what that would look like and tell me, don't worry if this isn't for you, but if this is something that you feel like you'd love to work with, I'd love to send you some of the fabric that I printed on Spoonflower to have you incorporate into the pattern, that kind of a thing.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, that would be a fun way to kind of engage people that might want to try the pattern out.
Mm-hmm. And then I think also ways to collaborate, teaming up for a giveaway for either your fabric or for an art print or both. I think it'd be really cool to do like if you had a quilt that had like the unicorn and then you also had an art print where someone could hang that up in their room and it goes together. I think that'd be really fun. Being a guest on a quilt blog, giving fabric to someone who's hosting a quilt along. So honestly, just looking at people in the quilting industry and how you can serve them. Here, I can give away fabric for this. I'd love to write a blog for you. I feel like it would serve your audience. Would you like to team up for a giveaway? I'm happy to ship the prize to the winner. Here's what I was thinking. Write up the post, show the picture, just take away any possible work. So all the person has to do is say yes or no. Instead of like, what would you want to do for this? You present the full idea, take away any work for them,
Right. So in terms of timeline, I was thinking, should I focus on trying to get my Instagram kind of more on brand for the next, 4 weeks? I don't know. And then approach collaborators so they can really see that look when they kind of scroll through, or is there...
So your options of what to do next would be, you're thinking either Instagram or what would be the other options?
I guess I'm just trying to figure out like what, before I reach out to somebody so they can see, like, should my website be more clear and maybe focus on my website and Instagram so that they can kind of see, oh, she's really doing kids fabric and kids quilts. And I want people, I guess, I don't know how long that would take to really get that message more clear, but I was thinking maybe before I approach people, do I need to make sure that message is like coming across?
Yeah. I mean, okay. So I was going to say unsolicited advice, but this is solicited. So I would, and tell me how painful this would be for you. But if I were you, I would delete the top 6 photos on your Instagram feed with your quilt and your table runner. And you might die a little bit inside, like that was so much work, and it was. However, the point of your Instagram feed is to get your brand across. And so I would take those off. And this would be actually a great opportunity for you to, if you don't have the time, to either hire someone or reach out to someone and ask if they would be willing to make one of those patterns with fabric solid fabric, or, you want to recreate that with fabric that fits your brand,
Yeah, that's completely fair. This is what I need to do. I should get my mom to make an Instagram, and she can make all my quilts in these fabrics that she likes.
You taught someone.
And she'll be my collaborator. I'm gonna repost them all on her Instagram account. She doesn't really use hers very much, but there's a way to repurpose all that. But it won't be too painful. I can take them off.
Yeah, and as far as like the quilt photos go, and I get first of all that there is a budget, so as I was going to say, well, okay, there's 2 quilt photographers. The photography that you put on Instagram is very crucial. And so I love the look of like this mock-up. It's got on the floor a giant snake and a little chair with a cushion. I'm assuming that's a mock-up. Am I right?
Yes. Yes. And I paid for
So
that mock-up and it looks great
it
because it's
does.
high
So
quality.
for listeners who don't know what a mock-up is, it's like there's a set picture, and in this particular instance, there's two posters on the wall, and I'm assuming they were blank, and you could put whatever in those posters. Could you change the color of the snake beanbag thing on the floor?
Yes. So everything's kind of customizable. There's a little doll. I changed her dress. And so I bought that on, I think, is it Createsy? I think that sells those. And so, you can buy them in their Photoshop files that you can totally customize, but they basically render it. If you don't know why it's expensive to buy these, it's hard to make those and put them into perspective and clip out all. So they do all the work, and all you do is literally like paste your file, and it appears in the document, and then you export it and you can post it to Instagram, and they look great.
And it looks like a room in your house where you just hung your posters, which, if I might even guess, those posters have never even been created as a poster. Am I right? It's just the graphic.
Just done printouts on my at-home printer, and that's it.
It's just so cool. I mean, that's actually an idea for a quilt mock-up too, is to do a mock-up of a quilt. Anyhow, if your quilt photos can have that same kind of look, in that same modern sort of, the wood floor and the light walls and the cool wood modern chair that's in there. So if your quilt photos, because right now your quilt photo is in a home with a fireplace, again, very traditional, and the table runner, it's just very traditional. You want your quilt photos to match the look of that mock-up, And so whether you send it off, why I talk about budget, whether you send that off to a quilt photographer who can match that for you, or if you find a location like someone's house, or I don't even know, IKEA, you pop into IKEA and take a photo in IKEA. But if you can find a space that has that look and get your quilt photos taken there, then that'll be really, really, oh yeah, I'm going down and seeing the same mock-up, the snake that's in it's got the leaves on it. So listeners, if you go to Bowberry Design Co., her Instagram account, look for photos where there's a snake kind of beanbag on the ground, and you will see how she changed what's in that photo. You can even change one poster, two posters on the wall, that kind of thing. So that's what a mock-up is.
And I have fabric mock-ups that I've used. If you have to kind of scroll further back, but I've been using, but I could show off my designs on fabric mock-ups also.
I see. I'm going to hold it up. Is this one of them?
Yes. So that is kind of a fun kind of wilderness print that I did. And then you can put the little swatches, and I just changed them out in Photoshop.
So again, listeners, this is from April 22nd. And there's it's a little squares and rectangles of fabric that look like it's on a white background. And you can see a little bit of a shadow on some of the fabrics. This is not a real, these fabrics were not laying down on anything. They were mocked up in Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator?
I made them in Illustrator and the mock-ups in Photoshop. Yeah.
Yeah. And just plop her designs in, and it automatically will layer it. And I mean, it's very cool. So that's what a mock-up is. So that, I guess my first tips as to what to do next would be to clean up the Instagram, to take off any of the red and white. I would probably not worry about going too far back, because that shares your story and your journey. Once we get to your drawings where you start to get the unicorns and your look and your brand a bit more solidified, then I would delete, the most recent. But don't, good. I'm glad your mom can post those, because I feel like such a bad person when I'm like, yeah, you're going to want to delete that. I know how much work went into that, but delete it,
I'll have to do it for her. But what I will do is I will repost them all in that order and just kind of show the making of the quilt. And then I can share those on my stories, and kind of show I probably won't, because it's past tense, but in future, if she posts stuff in her fabrics, I can always share, like, my mom made this my quilt pattern and check it out in her style. And because I do she doesn't want to be online or like, any sort of presence, I think, but she's really supportive of it. And I always think like, you're going to be my first employee when I have, make any money. And so I think of her as definitely like a part of this. So I think she should just start posting. I don't know if she has any posts on Instagram, so it'll be kind of fun to show her how to engage with this stuff.
So another idea too is you can put multiple photos on your Instagram account so that first square that appears on your Instagram feed is your brand. But then if someone clicks on it and swipes to the next photo, they can see the other, and that way you can showcase what it looks like in other fabrics, which is great, but you'll want your Instagram feed to be totally on brand.
Yeah. So if people are listening to this, they might not see any of these pictures until.
True. That is true.
They'll be gone. You'll have to follow. I'll link to my mom's account somewhere.
You know what? Are you fine if I take a screenshot and we can share it on my website? Okay.
Yeah, because I think the visual is interesting. I also want to have like my profile picture be more interesting. That's kind of my professional like work picture that I use for everything. And I'd like to have that be a little more fun. But I don't know what that should look like. So I might.
Yeah, it really is. It's worth hiring a photographer to get some headshots and some quilt photos. It just is. I mean, probably once every 6 months, I should do that. I just recently hired a quilt photographer and I went and took a bunch of quilts with me and got a ton of photos done. And I now have content for a long time that I can share over and over and over. So, so that is one idea. Also, real quick, I want to touch on your Instagram, your bio. So Sherry Freyermuth, Blueberry Design Company. After that, I would change this up. So right now it says cheerful designs for quilters, crafters, and kids. So you want your Instagram bio to reflect this niche that you're narrowing down to. So cheerful designs for quilters. You could even just say that. Or, I would love if it said something. Oh, it does say surface pattern designer. So surface pattern designer, quilt patterns. Surface and quilt pattern designer. The less words, the better. You want to write everything at like a 3rd grade level, which I know sounds insulting, but it's true. And
pattern or fabric designer, or because surface pattern designer is kind of like an industry term. Maybe not everyone understands that. Should I say fabric?
You're right. Yep. And your fabrics, they're available on Spoonflower? Is that right?
Some of them. I haven't put them all on there because I'm hoping to license some of them. So I hadn't. Spoonflower's in a weird space right now because I love printing, but they got bought out by Shutterfly. And so I think a lot of the community is like, what's going to happen with Spoonflower? And I was going to put like a ton of stuff on there this summer. And I thought, let me just focus on one thing. So I haven't been like adding to my shop. And I don't know if that's something I should be continuing.
No, I wouldn't worry about that for now. Honestly, I would really foster that relationship with PBS Paintbrush Studios, because that would be really ideal. And if you work with them. So if I were to see someone say fabric designer, I would go, and I just did. I clicked the link in your bio, like, so where is your fabric? Where do I get it? And then I see Spoonflower Shop. So I guess if you leave that, you don't need to be adding to it. And yay, your Spoonflower Shop definitely is on brand. You've got the bright, fun colors, and that's perfect. Yeah. So that would work. Yeah, okay. Fabric and quilt pattern designer. And when I see, that's honestly why I wanted you for this. I'm like, fabric designer, cool. Like that's extra cool. So I would put that in there. And yeah, I'm just so proud of your look that you've got. It's very unique and very niched. So yeah, the main goal I would say is to get your quilts to match the design. Reach out and collaborate with people, and you will definitely find people who are going to mesh with and connect with your look. And then also, we'll have to wrap it up soon, but you did ask about an email list. Well, I asked you, do you feel connected to your past customers? And your response is?
I don't really have any customers.
Okay.
I don't know what I wrote in my email. Let me go back. What did I actually write down for that?
Let's take a minute and pull this up here.
I changed my window.
Well, okay, I guess that leads me to a question. Do you know if people buy your pattern or get your pattern from Paintbrush Studios website? Do you know who is downloading it?
No, I guess I could reach out and ask them if the only thing I did was I put in the pattern, like, I would love for you to tag me if you make this. I only recently learned that a lot of people hashtag their quilt names. And I was like, missed opportunity. I didn't put a hashtag in the pattern, but I did kind of put my handle to say, tag me or email me any feedback, or if you make it, I'd love to see what you make and promote.
Okay, I would update that pattern and add a hashtag and ask Paintbrush if they could update that, because that's huge. With that said, I know how many patterns I sell and I know how many people I see using the hashtag, and they don't add up. So there are people who are going to buy your pattern who don't use the hashtag. The information of who bought your pattern is really valuable. So if there's any way that Paintbrush can share that with you, and I know that's annoying for them to yes, every quarter we'll send you a list of, but even just now, I don't know if there's any way for you to get that information, because those are people who do like what you're buying or what you're creating, and you do want to have a relationship with them. And so I asked that. One major way to have that relationship is email. Another way is Instagram. And so with an email, I'd ask, do you have an email list? And you said, well, I'm planning on sending out my September newsletter. So a couple of things. One, it's not an email list. Let's make it a little less formal. So instead of this newsletter, for example, you can send a newsletter out to your followers, the people on your list, telling them about this interview and just chatting like a friend. Wow, I just had a podcast interview and I shared about my story, maybe give a few bullet points. I'd love for you to listen and hear about my story, and then they can connect with you through that. You can share about PBS fabrics. I am so excited. I worked with PBS and they are sharing 2 of my patterns. Here's the links. Share about your design. Share about your Instagram account. I'm changing up my Instagram account. Here are the pictures I used to have. Here's why I'm taking them off. Just like a friend, give them a little update, of what's going on. When you change your portfolio picture on Instagram, here's my old photo. Here's my new one. Here's why I changed it. And tell the story of, it was so weird to look for, or whatever the adjective might be, fun to find a photographer. I hate being in front of the camera. Here's a blooper photo that will not be featured, but look how awkward it was, or, that kind of a thing. Just use your emails as a space to share your story of what's going on behind the scenes, and use that to connect with your audience,
Yeah, that's really helpful. Those are all really great ideas. So it's not like newsletter and it comes out every Tuesday and this and that. So
right.
Yeah. No, I that definitely helps a lot, because I didn't really know what I was going to put in that. Just was like, I know I need to do it.
Yeah. They're like, so there's this email list I'm supposed to have, and then what, and it's like, well, I don't have anything to share. You do, though, because you have life, you've been living and you've been going through things, and you can share that with them. So it doesn't have to be this, here's a new blog post, here's a new tutorial, it can be very organic, if you will. Let's see. There was one other thing I wanted to touch on. Oh, right. Okay. With emails, you'd asked about opt-ins. You had a question that said, I'm trying to figure out the most appealing opt-in. So my suggestion is create them all. If you come up with an idea of a free opt-in, offer it and see which one resonates the most. Again, that would be through your email, which then they're already on your email list, Instagram, and that's when collaboration becomes real big. If you can be a guest on someone's blog, if PBS can share, if you can get other eyes to see your opt-in, then that's ideal. And I'm gonna pull up, you use Flowdesk, it looks like, and you have an opt-in here. It says, sign up for updates from Bowberry Design Company. Sign up today for free quilt patterns, craft templates, and downloadable artwork. So my suggestion is split those up. and be very specific. When you are opting into this, you are getting one free pattern, and this is what it is.
Okay.
Instead of, it sounds like if I'm opting in right now, I'm going to get multiple free patterns. I'm going to get a craft templates and downloadable artwork. And I'm not sure what they are. And your audience doesn't know either. So it's very vague and it's a lot. And so if you have multiple downloads that are free, break those up. Here is where you get this one. There's also, some people make a library, which you're in Shopify. I don't know. That might be a bit of a headache. They have one page that's password protected and you can log in and get all of their free things. But point is, it's also really nice to break those up in Flowdesk or in your email so that you know specifically who's interested in what. Okay, they wanted this art print. They wanted this free pattern. Clearly, these people are more interested in the artwork. These people are more interested in the patterns. This pattern's doing better. I can see because more people have opted in for this one. No one's really opting into that one. Okay, and there's much more information there for you to see. And it serves your audience better where they know exactly what they're going to get if they opt in. And it just clears that up.
Yeah, I like that idea. I guess I could I don't know if I would be creating multiple links or just testing one at a time, but I can kind of figure
I would test one at a time. And it's a lot too. If you come out and say, here's 100 free things, which one do you want? They'll be like, wow. So just do one at a time. And maybe it sounds like you have a lot of content. So that's great. Sometimes the issue is the content, but you could do one per month. That's another great option for your email. Okay. I'll be sharing, here's a sneak peek of what's coming. And that gives you content for Instagram. Here's the new free opt-in. And I would invite people, once they do get your opt-in, to share about it. Create an image where they can go and put it in their stories, and an image where they can put it on Instagram, whether it's a free mock-up or whatever, and say it flat out. Don't say, I would love for you to, but say, go and share this on social media. Let people know that you've got this free template, or free download or whatever, and make it very easy for them to click it, add it to their stories, and share about it so that they're doing promotion for you.
Okay. Yeah. I'll try that for sure. I like the idea of the library of free things, but I think it is overwhelming. At first, maybe there's a password that they can get later, or I can think about
something to think about.
Yeah.
If you need to. But I mean, email opt-ins work great as well. Yeah. So
I sign up for a lot of them.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I do too. So I think we've covered some ideas for you. And do you have any wrap-up questions or anything you want to add before we wrap up our call?
I think you've covered all of my questions. I think you really broke down a set of, actionable steps I can take right now and get my Instagram going, and then kind of move forward with my personal style. So I'm excited to really focus. That's what I was struggling with. So
yeah. Well, good. I'm so excited. So keep me posted. Please reach out. Let me know how things are going, especially when you get your fabric contract. I know that that's in the future for you, and that's worth celebrating. So
speak it into existence. I hope it does happen.
Yes, definitely. So this was really fun. Thanks again. I will put a link in the show notes. If people are wondering, where are those show notes? Go to quilterscandy.com, click on the podcast tab, and you can see the podcast with Sherry Freyermuth. So that's where you can find the photos, the links that we're talking about. And again, thanks so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Sherry, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I seriously enjoyed chatting with you. You are just so sweet, and I cannot wait to see your business grow and to see you implement the things that we talked about and even beyond that. If you enjoyed this episode of the Craft to Career podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and leave a review. Let me know what you liked about the episode, if there's anything you'd love to hear more of. And next week on the podcast, we are having Melanie of Southern Charm Quilts. I absolutely love Melanie's style. She has a beautiful look, and she is just coming out with her very first book that she's written of quilt patterns. I can't wait to pick her brain and hear all about it. Plus, she has some really unique things with her business growth that I just can't wait to discuss and share with all of you. So be sure to tune in next Friday for episode 21, where we will have Melanie of Southern Charm Quilts. And also, if you are interested in learning how to write and sell your own quilt patterns, don't forget to visit my website and join the wait list. I open registration September 7th for 6 days only, and that's the only time this year it will open, so be sure not to miss it. All right, have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you next week on the Craft to Career podcast.